By the early months of 1949, I had penetrated deep into the jungle terrain of Chanthaburi's northernmost district. I had been hiking on remote trails for months, and my meditation was back to full strength. One evening, while I was seated on the ledge beneath an overhanging rock, my mind experienced an occurrence that left a lasting impression on me. I was meditating nonstop at that time, trying to uproot the remaining defilements that obstructed my path. Suddenly and unexpectedly, my mind dropped into a state of profound stillness, where not a single thought disturbed its sublime tranquility. Except for a very refined awareness that seemed to suffuse everything throughout the entire universe, absolutely nothing else appeared. The whole world appeared to be filled with this subtle quality of knowing, the effect of which was truly amazing. Whether I actively investigated the body or rested quietly in samādhi, stray thoughts did not intervene. The mind remained effortlessly bright and clear for hours. From that day forward, the mind continued to contemplate all aspects of the body for many hours at a stretch. My concentration was intense and impactful, turning into a relentless driving force. As the investigations gathered momentum through knowledge and skill gained over time, I knew where in my mind to dig and probe. It was just a matter of precisely locating defilements and extracting them. I felt like an experienced folk doctor who knows where to look for wild roots and herbs growing deep in the jungle. All he has to do is penetrate the tangled vegetation, find them, and pull them up. In this more advanced stage of my practice, my mind remained completely disengaged from peripheral thoughts and emotions, and could thus focus exclusively on whatever appeared in its field of awareness. My body contemplation soon reached the stage where wisdom sprang into action automatically, without conscious intention. The effect was a complete absorption in those investigations, both day and night. Wisdom moved through mental images of the body with speed and agility, uncovering lingering attachments, grabbing those mental fetters by the scruff of the neck and forcefully yanking them out. The mind spun relentlessly through every part and every aspect of the body, searching for the root causes of craving and delusion. This is surely what Ajahn Mun had meant when he told me to use the noble truths to smash the body to pieces. I reached the stage where I experienced the mind as though it were totally independent and soaring freely. As amazing as the sense of unhindered freedom appeared, I was reluctant to entirely trust this perception. I felt that nothing should be taken for granted at this stage in the practice. I continued to probe deeper into the mind, giving wisdom full rein to uncover the truth. When I say the mind appeared to soar freely, I mean the mind felt as buoyant as a wisp of cotton wool floating on a cushion of air. Probing deeper into that perception, I realized that, although the cotton wisp appeared to be floating independently, it actually relied on air currents to keep it aloft. Without that uplifting support, it would fall back to earth. I also realized that the current state of my practice presented a similar predicament. In the same way that the sense of floating free and independent was an illusion, because its sense of freedom was in fact dependent on other factors, so too were the amazing experiences in my meditation, just faulty perceptions rooted in the mind's fundamental illusion about itself. In other words, I still had crucial work left to do. Shortly after that profound realization, I moved into a shallow, cave-like opening hollowed out of the base of a cliff, deep in a dense tropical forest on the south side of Basri Mountain. This was an area known locally for its deadly malaria outbreaks. The jungle was also home to many dangerous wild animals, such as elephants, tigers, leopards, bears, venomous snakes, and wild boars. I had been warned of all these dangers, but I chose to go anyway, to challenge my mind's ability to respond decisively to extreme conditions. Sheltering in the cave, I pushed myself mercilessly, fasting and going without sleep for days at a time, determined not to relax my efforts until I had achieved a further breakthrough. Within days, I had come down with a severe case of malaria, which resulted in alternating bouts of high fevers and shaking chills. Throughout the duration of these punishing symptoms, the sharpness and keenness of my mind became more and more acute and perceptive. On certain occasions, my awareness seemed to disconnect from external sense contact altogether. But normally, I could detect a very subtle sensation that is difficult to describe, emanating from the physical sphere. My mind thus became fully focused on what appeared to be an exceedingly refined breath sensation. When I was able to hold the sensation steady at that refined level, it became increasingly fainter and more elusive as it faded in and out of awareness. Focusing intently on the faintest of those sensations, I watched them steadily become so indistinct that only a tiny trace of movement was detectable. I continued to delicately probe and question this almost imperceptible sensation until it finally faded into complete and utter stillness. All mental motion ceased. Nothing remained in the sphere of awareness. Nothing lingered to search for. Nothing was left to focus on. All attachment between that totally still awareness and the activities of body and mind had been severed. Awareness was then free, vast, and supremely empty, without limits, boundless, and all-encompassing. Nothing at all enclosed or obstructed it. When everything that had permeated awareness vanished, there was only a genuine, all-pervading emptiness that contained nothing. Emptiness of this kind is a total and permanent disengagement that requires no further effort to maintain. At that unparalleled moment, awareness expressed the highest form of freedom, having absolutely let go of every vestige of primal ignorance, thus overturning the perpetual cycle of birth and death, once and for all. After disabling delusion's all-encompassing network of ignorance with one powerful and decisive stroke, wisdom's insight delivered a fatal right hook to the chin of the champion of samsaric existence, knocking it out cold, never again to rise from the mat. In the singularity of the moment, I finally came face to face with the Lord Buddha. I do not mean to boast, but that is the only way I can describe it. I realized unequivocally that attachment to the cycle of birth and death, repeated endlessly over countless lifetimes, was rooted in a universal ignorance of the truth. Free from that attachment now, the world of ignorance no longer found a foothold in an awareness that was absolutely pure and at one with Nibbāna. Beyond that, I can find no words to convey the truth, because that singular purity lies outside the realm of conventional language. Ordinary people who try to wrap their heads around it are bound to be left bewildered. I finally rid myself of delusion and confusion by battling toe-to-toe with the demon of ignorance until the power of supreme wisdom broke through its last line of defense. Supported by the combined forces of faith, effort, mindfulness, samādhi, and wisdom, all of which had been well trained during countless lives of Buddhist practice, the ramparts of ignorance were stormed, and the great demon was slain in its previously impregnable samsaric fortress. Supreme mindfulness and supreme wisdom closed all the pathways through which awareness could escape into sights, sounds, smells, tastes, tactile sensations, and thoughts. This allowed wisdom's forces to battle their way into delusion's inner sanctum and take out the central tyrant, the primary cause of all suffering. When awareness finally let go of body and mind, only the amazingly pure Dhamma remained. An occurrence inexpressibly more astounding than anything I had ever experienced before in my years of meditation. The plaintive song that I had overheard a lady in the north sing many years before rang true. Suffering of body and mind consumes my thoughts and feelings. Suffering binds me so tightly. The suffering of body and mind had now flipped over to become ease of body and mind. The verse, "Suffering binds me so tightly," had been transformed into "Happiness embraces me so tightly." My spontaneous reaction was, how incredible. I had seen the truth that I had sought for so long. Nibbāna is inherent within the realm of human existence, but it is not something specifically human. Nibbāna cannot be found in the elements of earth, water, fire, or wind, nor in anything of the physical universe. Figuratively, we may say that Nibbāna is a realm of absolute freedom. But in truth, Nibbāna is a natural principle innate within all of us. It has no physical characteristics whatsoever. The five senses cannot know it. Philosophy cannot reveal it. Science cannot verify it. Even extensive study of the Buddha's teachings cannot reach Nibbāna unless the teachings are diligently put into practice. Only by practicing Buddhist meditation can the mind make the adjustments needed to realize Nibbāna. All of the many past Buddhas and their countless arahant disciples did just that, allowing the truth to arise unequivocally within their minds. If you want to dispel doubts about the ultimate consequences of your actions, you must resolve these uncertainties internally by practicing meditation until you clearly realize the truth of these things for yourself. Even doubts that have plagued you for your whole life will dissipate in a flash at the moment that realization occurs. Just as perpetual darkness turns to brightness the moment a light is turned on, the truth of the Buddha's teachings will be revealed to those who practice the teachings with diligence and an unwavering determination to discover the truth. To fully realize the truth about their own potential for release from suffering, seekers of the way must strive to become spiritual warriors on the path to liberation. Their hearts need to have a firm resolve that can boldly stand up to their internal enemies. Finding the strength of purpose to fight with all their might, without becoming weakened or disheartened, and without retreating when the struggle appears too difficult. When this kind of fighting spirit is exhibited in the pursuit of Dhamma, then time and place are not relevant to the quest for truth. Regardless of whether it is the Buddha's age or our present age, Nibbāna can always be attained by those who earnestly follow the way to freedom. The true Dhamma always exists in the present moment, the timeless present, here and now. At the moment, awareness passed beyond the tangled jungles of samsaric existence. Wonder and amazement arose in me as I sat alone amidst the mountainous wilderness of northern Chanthaburi. It was clear that ignorance had ceased creating future births in the various realms of sentient existence. What remained was a completely pure awareness. As the sun rose above the mountain peaks, I bowed deeply in my heart to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Those three absolutely pure jewels which had been fused into the one unconditioned element of Nibbāna. A heart filled with Dhamma reflected with immense gratitude on everyone who had so graciously assisted me in reaching the land of freedom. I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the many sacrifices my parents had made on my behalf. It was impossible to assess the value of all their love and care for me. A moment of rapturous joy arose at the thought that I could now truly repay my great debt of gratitude to them. My gratitude for Ajahn Mun's love and compassion knew no bounds. He had taken this worthless-looking old rag, tamed and refined its coarse and clumsy exterior, and polished the gold concealed inside until it had shone forth unhindered in all directions. I felt as though he had given me renewed courage every time I began to falter. He acted as both a mother and father in my times of need, to such an extent that I knew I would never be able to repay even a small part of the debt I owed him. He was living proof of that which knows. Sailing on the raft of his compassionate guidance, my heart had reached the other shore. With the turbulent waves and karmic consequences of greed, ill will, and delusion now left behind, I was free to leave the precious raft behind at the shoreline. How incredible! I continued to reside in that small cave under a cliff in the wilderness, resting serenely in the undefiled bliss of final release from suffering. My heart rejoiced in the peace and quiet of that sparsely populated mountain region, where human contact was limited to the folks giving food on my daily alms round. That wild, uncivilized jungle area was inhabited by good, honest, moral people. Even jungles with dense forests, tangled vegetation, and wild animals are not as dangerous as the civilized jungles of human society. Places overrun with entangling defilements, where greed, hatred, and delusion are constantly on the prowl. These ferocious mental tigers inflict deep internal wounds, gradually eroding a person's physical and mental health until the damage becomes acute. Such injuries are extremely difficult to treat. Though the wounds tend to fester menacingly, those who are afflicted usually neglect their injuries, hoping they will somehow heal by themselves. As the 1949 hot season neared, and the sweltering heat and humidity began intensifying in the high jungles of northern Chantaburi, I made my way back down to the marshy seashore communities of my youth. Relieved by then from all encumbering burdens, both mental and physical, I somewhat reluctantly returned to Sangam Forest Monastery to resume my responsibilities as temporary abbot of the small monastic community there, which of course meant living again amid the thorns and brambles of mundane society. Initially, I had contemplated taking the excellent Dhamma in my heart and teaching it to the people in my hometown. But eventually, I concluded that it was beyond the spiritual power and ability of those people to grasp the radically profound nature of that supreme Dhamma. When I reflected on it, I felt disheartened by the prospect of trying to explain the amazing nature of that attainment to others. And so, I decided to remain silent. When I returned, after taking up my former position as abbot, I began to contemplate my next move.